essentially allow water to seep through between the screen here. This is Jonathan with Gutter Guards Direct. Today we are introducing the Ultimate Gutter Guard Challenge class of 2025 Gutter Guard systems. We selected a variety of systems for the 2025 test, and they kind of run the gamut from DIY Home Depot type products on up to professionally installed gutter guards. So in no particular order, today you will learn about the Englert MicroGuard system. It's a perforated aluminum gutter guard. It has a bunch of small holes that are drilled into it, and it's roughly a 5-foot panel. So a lot of screen area there, but small holes. Be very interested to see how that system works out over time. Something similar to that is another product called Shur-Flo. This is a wildly popular gutter guard. It's a panel also that has a bunch of holes drilled into it, has a little bit of a wavy surface to it, and the holes are roughly 1/8 inch in diameter. So the holes are a little bit less frequent and a little bit larger than the Englert system. That's followed by Gutter Rx. Gutter Rx and Shur-Flo, if you were put them side to side, other than one is available in colors, the RX is available in a couple different colors. Shur-Flo just being a mill finish, they look pretty similar and should have similar kind of functionality throughout. So in the perforated aluminum category, again, we've got the Englert MicroGuard, we've got Shur-Flo, and then we have Gutter Rx. Once you move into the micro mesh side of things, we have a system called Klean Gutter. Klean Gutter is a micro mesh system manufactured by the same company that makes Master Shield gutter guards, something that we've tested in the prior years, and something that's done extraordinarily well. So we're excited to have Klean Gutter as part of the test this year, and that is followed by another product, a long-term player called LeafSolution Xtreme. This is a product that we actually used to sell several years ago. They didn't call it LeafSolution Xtreme, they called it Rhino Guard or Rhino Gutter Guard, something to that extent several years ago. So if you're familiar with a product called Rhino, LeafSolution Xtreme is the identical product, just with a different name today. So that one is designed to install within the gutter. The Klean Gutter system is designed to slide up under the first course of shingles, although you can modify it to install within the gutter or up under the shingles, kind of buyer's choice. Then we're going to look at an expanded metal system. So just think of a chicken wire or an expanded metal type system. You can buy this at Home Depot, Lowe's, really any hardware store, typically speaking. It's also something that gutter contractors will install. So it's just an open, porous metal screen. Usually it's powder coated. In our particular case, it's a black powder coated steel. And it usually comes in 3 to 4 foot lengths. You'll see how that one performs over time. And that will be especially interesting when it comes to the locust flowers and the leaves that come off that tree, because they're pretty small and the holes in the system are pretty large. That is followed by Hoover Dam. Hoover Dam is a product that's kind of a hybrid really between a solid gutter cover and the expanded metal system. So it literally has a strip of expanded metal, and then it has a strip of solid surface, and it's kind of a, it trades off. So it goes expanded metal, solid surface, expanded metal, solid surface, and I guess the theory is the solid surface will keep most of the stuff out, and the expanded metal will allow the water to go through. You'll get to see how that thing works throughout the course of the year. So the other thing that we did this year is we had an open gutter. Oh, there's one other gutter guard I forgot to talk about. It is called GutterStuff. So GutterStuff is available really at, again, at Home Depot, Lowe's, Ace Hardware type stores. So it's kind of a triangular piece of foam. The best thing I can equate it to is a sponge or a pool filter. But essentially it's a triangulated type filter that goes inside the gutter, It's available for 5 and 6 inch gutters. We were able to get a size for our 6 inch gutter that where it actually sat below the lip level, so it sat, you know, it was kind of recessed down inside the gutter. And yeah, I'm not sure what to say about that one up front here. We've seen it over time. Usually it doesn't bode very well for homeowners that have the system. And really the reason why is the warranty. I think it even has a 20-year no-clog warranty on it, but the reality is the manufacturer requires you to remove it, shake it out, take the stuff out of it, and then reinstall it. And most people who are watching this video want to get out of the business of cleaning their gutters out. So the GutterStuff is something that we introduced this year in the test, so that'll be kind of the token a filter, a porous, it's made out of some sort of a plastic material, but just again, think of a sponge or a pool filter type thing. That's what the GutterStuff system is. And then we have an open gutter. So the open gutters is something that we introduced in the 2024 season with the idea that you want to see what the gutters look like over the course of time. So it's one thing to see the leaves and debris sitting on top of the gutter covers, but you need to put it into perspective for that particular environment. So we kept an open gutter on the south side of the garage so you could see what got inside that gutter over time. So stay tuned and we'll show you a little bit more about each of these products. This is a classic expanded metal system. I picked this up at Home Depot. It is just a powder coated metal with this diamond pattern mesh in it. So you can see my hand as easily on the back side as you can on the front side of it. So I don't have high expectations for this type of system. It's a popular system and we see it installed on a lot of homes still today. And it's something that gutter contractors use because a homeowner looks for a gutter guard. These guys can easily pick it up either at Home Depot, Lowe's, or at their local supply house, and then they just install it without any grand expectations for it to work one way or the other. This is probably best for keeping big leaves out of the gutters, but in terms of the small stuff that we're likely to see here, which is the pine needles, the locust flowers, and the leaves off the locust tree, we'll see how well this one does. Now, I have missed the season. We're kind of past the helicopter season because we started this test a little bit later than I anticipated. So had this been installed, my guess is we would have seen a lot of helicopters hanging out of it, but we'll keep it up next year and see how it does in the early spring there. So this is one of the systems that we will be testing. So this system is called GutterStuff. It is a foam-based product made out of some sort of polypropylene, I guess, and I've always equated this one to being something like a filter that you might have in your pool filter to keep stuff from getting into it. So essentially it is a filter of sorts in that it's going to prevent the leaves and debris from getting inside the gutter, wedged inside the gutter. The question is it going to sufficiently keep stuff off the surface? And if it does, great. If it doesn't, what happens to the water and the leaves and debris that build up on top of it? So we're excited to have this as part of the test. When I was buying this at Home Depot recently, the cashier told me that this is one of the most popular systems that they sell. It's always surprised me a little bit that it is one of the most popular systems, but we're excited to have this as part of the test for 2022. You can see here, it's kind of got a wedge component to it, so it's going to install within the gutter, kind of like so. Where my hand is the front edge of the gutter, and we'll hold it in place, and we'll see what happens with the GutterStuff gutter protection system. This is a system that's been on the market for quite a few years. It's also kind of an expanded aluminum frame or metal frame, powder coated white in this case. I've seen it, I think, both in white and brown or white and black. I picked this one up at Home Depot as well. It's got kind of an interesting design here in that it's got a bit of a stair step action going down the sides. So the idea is when you put it up at an angle, you can kind of see how it stair steps down and it then tries to drive the water down inside it. I have seen this installed on some houses. We have removed it from a few houses, but I haven't really seen how it performs when properly installed. So we are happy to introduce this as part of our test. This is where we're installing the Klean Gutter, so I just want to show you the face of the gutter. I got it just with my fingernails, mostly clean. This is where leaf filter was last year on the south side of the garage. I may, once I get all these things installed, pressure wash the front to get them as clean as possible. But as you can see, once the gutters have been up there for a while, they do get dirty. Here's the inside of the gutter. I just ran some water through it. So there's a little bit of sediment sitting in the bottom, little bits and pieces of dirt and granules and whatever, but basically it's clean enough, and we'll just take that into account when we take this thing off next year. So here's the panel that we're installing. It's got quite a long, wide opening of the screen, and then you can see it's got kind of an expanded aluminum framework below it. So it's a screen touching the framework behind it, which will create the capillary action. This one also has a little seam in it, and essentially it's just where the under expanded metal and that screen get crimped together. So the idea is, I think it keeps the screen somewhat tight on the surface, and it also acts as a water break. So as the water kind of comes from the top down, it hits this and it helps break it and push it down underneath the screen. So I've never seen this one installed. I've never seen it in action before, so I'm just as curious as you are to see how this one performs over time. I've created some end caps out of the product itself. So there's generally two ways that you can put an end cap on. One is this application, where you just cut snip the ends that overhang the gutter, and then you just create fashion an end cap out of it. The other way is just to cut it off straight, and then to actually build an end cap out of some gutter coil. So we've opted, for simplicity's sake, just to do it this way, and hopefully that'll do an effective job keeping any stuff from blowing in from the sides. So you can see we've got it both on the right end cap and on the left end cap. Okay, I was just attempting to install this, and I heard a little clink inside the gutter, and lo and behold, what happened with the rear, this is just a little piece of metal that got folded over, and then they crimp it. Although in this case it looks like they just have like a little dot crimper. So you can see these dots along the back of the panel here every, I don't know, 5 or 6 inches. And this must have been a little extra piece where it had you know, they had come to an end of a section, and they put a new section of metal on there, and they tried to crimp it in place. And as I was sliding it up under the shingles over at this end, that fell off. So I just stopped and looked inside the gutter and pulled that out. So just keep that in mind. That could happen, probably will happen. First time I've ever touched this product, and it happened. All right, here's another issue I just ran into. So because this roof, the house, the garage was built in 1929, so it's been re-roofed over the years. And as a result, the roof system, and this drip edge in particular, overhang pretty well into the gutter. So if we're installing a gutter guard that has to live within the gutter, such as this LeafSolution product that we're looking at, we actually have to drop the gutter down so we have a full run between the front and the back edge of the fascia board. Because if it sits too high, then this drip edge and the roof decking, which is right below my thumb, and the shingles themselves can get in the way of that implementation. So this is a product, the Klean Gutter is a product that is designed to go up under the first course of shingles. My understanding is that it can get installed two ways. One is up under the shingles and one is within the gutter. But since it's kind of original way of being installed is up under the shingles, that's how we're going to do it. But when I created the end cap here, you can see I didn't trim it out far enough to allocate for the overhang here on the roof. So I'm gonna have to trim this end cap up even farther so that I can slide this up, because you can see right now we're not getting up underneath the edge of the gutter there. So give me a minute and I will go ahead and take care of that. Okay, I trimmed it up a little bit more, and this is the right end cap, and you can see how it's shorter all of a sudden. So that little piece of metal that fell off was not only acting as an extension piece, but it was also giving it a little bit more rigidity when you slide it up under the shingles. So this is the framework minus the extension piece at the back. You can see right there I only have two hands, so I can't really get to it, but you'll see right here how it's now shorter there. Now this is the end cap, so it's not going to really make a difference. So I guess it was when I created the end cap and I cut that piece off that it allowed this little piece, because it just had, you can see it just has a single bump right there in the middle is where they crimped it onto place. And obviously when I was pushing it through the gutter, it created enough disruption that it just shot that little piece off. So it does look like the piece that's going up under the shingles will stay in place. The piece that was part of the end cap did fall off, and that would be okay. But I've trimmed it out another half inch or so, and hopefully that'll be adequate to allow us to slide it up under the shingles. Here we have the LeafSolution product. This used to be a product that we installed, and it was, at the time it was called Rhino. I think the name has been changed to Protect the Innocent, and it is now part of the LeafSolution family. So I'm gonna have to look up and see what version of LeafSolution this is. They also did call it, I think, Xtreme Guard. So I'm not 100% sure at this point, but it is a product that we had a lot of experience with. As you can see, it's kind of similar to the LeafSolution, the other LeafSolution that we had up here that has got the expanded aluminum framework behind the screen. The screen on this system isn't quite as tightly woven as it was, and what it doesn't have are the downward dips. So the other system had these series of 3 downward dip channels to slow the flow of the water. This panel just has a wider area to take in more water over the course of the gutter. There's a 5 and 6 inch version. This is the 6 inch version. So really the only difference between the two is that you have a little bit more metal on the backside for the 6 inch version. It's designed to live within the gutter. So it screws down on the front lip, and then it screws to the fascia board on the backside. So with our gutters that we have on this house, we have 6 inch gutters up there. We may run into a situation where the overhang on this roof is a little bit more, extends a little bit into the gutter. So we may have to flatten the back on this to slide it up underneath there, but it should work in either case. I'm getting ready to install the Englert perforated aluminum panel. Just a couple comments on this one that differentiates it from other systems on the market. You can see on the back side of it, instead of having an upward flange, it has a downward flange. And that downward flange is designed to sit on top of the hangers inside the gutter. And what it'll do, because it's higher on the back than on the front, is it'll put it up at a little bit of an angle, a forward pitch, which is a good thing with any gutter guard, and it's especially good with this type of system. So you can see this has a bunch of small holes in it, which are smaller and more prevalent than some of the other panels that we have up here. So I am really looking forward to seeing how this one performs. You can see on the ends here, I've just created end caps to keep or minimize any leaves and debris getting in from the sides. And I'm going to go ahead and get that installed. Here's the panel installed in the gutter. It was a really tight fit from back to front, because that flange on the rear, instead of going upwards, goes down. And I noticed that the panel seemed a little long, so if I had just kind of put it in the way it would naturally feel like it would fit, this lip extended past the front edge of the gutter. So I had to put a lot of pressure on it to push it back towards the end of the gutter, or the rear portion of the gutter. And what I noticed is it actually is sitting kind of back behind the gutter itself. So, and it's in there tight. I mean, if you push down on this thing, it's as solid as you would hope. Now, another thing that I noticed is I put 4 screws in here because the metal was sticking up a little bit. And anytime that happens with a system like this, it could potentially allow water to seep through between the screen here and, or between the cover and the gutter lip itself. So you want to try to keep that gap closed as much as possible. Because normally there's weep holes at the very front of these perforated systems, but if you look at this one, it actually doesn't have weep holes. So the weep holes are normally on the vertical wall coming back up. There's a little bit of a stair step here, but there aren't weep holes in that front edge. So everything stops right here. So I added a 4th screw right here to push this end down. I was just going to add a 5th screw here to push this one down, but you know what, I'm going to leave it because it had a tendency to kind of push up anyway, and this is about a 4-foot run, so that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 screws over a 4-foot run is a lot of screws to be adding to it. So I corrected this one over here, so it's pushed down, but because this one doesn't have a weep hole, I'm kind of curious to see how it will perform. So I'm just going to leave that one alone for the time being, and we'll see how this one does. Okay, I'm back looking at the Englert system here, and I decided, once I kind of looked across the back of the panel, the right-hand rear was sitting down quite a bit farther than the left hand, and it still looks like it's sitting quite a bit lower than the right hand or the left hand side. So I did loosen the screws back up, and then I pulled that little downward flange here at the rear to the inside of the gutter. So you can kind of see it's pushed in there pretty darn tight, and I wanted to make it more consistent all the way across. It also reveals the weep holes that are in the rear portion of that panel. And then after I did that, I decided to screw this all the way down. So we now have 5 screws in this panel, so it's solid all the way across the front. One of the things I find interesting about this system is because it has that downward flange instead of the upward flange, it is putting pressure kind of into the gutter and onto the hangers, which forces it up. So you can see just where I've put this end cap on it, it's got a nice forward slope. In fact, I would say this forward slope is even steeper than the leaf filter system, which also has a very subtle built-in slope to it. So when you kind of look across the gutter guards, you can see the next one over is Gutter Rx, and the one past that is the Shur-Flo system, followed by Leaf Filter and Master Shield. So it might be a little difficult to see, but let me zoom in here. And you can see the 2 perforated panels, Gutter Rx and Shur-Flo, how low they sit inside the gutter. I mean, they are more or less flat inside the gutter. In fact, since they have an upper flange and then they come back down, it's almost like they're a little bit concave going across there. And I can get up closer to kind of show you that, but if I can zoom in and get some clarity on that gutter, edge of the gutter over there, you can kind of see how the Gutter Rx dips down a little bit before it comes back up at the end. Doesn't seem to be quite as pronounced on the Shur-Flo system, but it is pretty much the same sort of implementation with both those systems. So the difference between those 2 perforated panels and this perforated panel is that this one has a little bit more slope to it. So we'll see how it does. It shouldn't take too long for stuff to start falling onto these and giving us a real good barometer as to how they're going to perform over time. The next system we're looking at is called LeafOff. So this is a solid panel, and it's a long panel. So this is a system that is designed to go over the first course of shingles and under the second course of shingles. So it's probably the longest panel of any system that we've installed. Probably the next closest one would be Master Shield, which was a long panel, but not this long. So you can see it's got a bunch of stuff sitting on it, some pine needles, some dirt buildup, some residue from the locust flowers that fell off in the spring here. So this one was partially installed on the south side of the garage, but it's a 5-foot panel. And the last panel that we have here on the north side of the garage, which is where I was going to put the Klean Gutter system originally, is just a little bit too long. So this is a little over 4 feet long, and the Klean Gutter panel is only 4 feet long. So I had to essentially move this one from the south side to the north side, which will be fine. So I just want to point out that there is stuff that has built up on the nose of it. You can see the top of it's pretty clean. There's a little bit of stuff just kind of clinging on there. And what I've seen over the last couple of months since this was installed was stuff was sitting on top of it, but it worked its way off. So you can probably see where there's kind of dirt marks on there. That's pretty indicative of where there was debris, mostly those locust flowers at some point. So because it's a low friction system, being just a solid metal panel, and it was up there at a good angle, that allowed most of that stuff to cruise right off the top after it dried up. So what we've got dangling now are a few seed pods and a few pine needles and maybe a few locust flowers holding it all together. So I fully expect that will fall off. But I think what's interesting, and this is kind of how the technology of this system is, the water comes around that nose and then it gets inside the gutters, and you can see this little gap here, which this is the locust flowers right here, how it kind of clings onto it. But more noticeably, or more notably, is the nose here. So as the water works its way around the edge, let me see if I can get my camera in a good spot here. It's kind of hard to do. I'll rest it up against my belly. All right, so as the water comes around, that's where it brings the leaves and debris when it's raining. And that's why you see that stuff clinging to the front edge of this panel, essentially the nose of it. But then you can also see all the residue that builds up on it. So one of the complaints about this type of system is that a lot of the organic matter and a lot of the debris that does curl around with the water, well, it may not clog up the interior of the gutter, or it may not get stuck between the gutter lip and the gutter guard itself. It can build up, and it will build up on the face of that, and then over a period of time that water will start to lose its adhesion. So instead of the water just tightly hugging that, because you've got all that gunk there, it doesn't allow the water to adhere to it as it should. So people that have this type of system and run into that situation really need to come out with a garden hose or a pressure washer and knock that stuff off every once in a while. This panel was up there for, like I said, maybe 2 months at the most, and you can kind of see already how that stuff is built up on top of it. So we'll get it reinstalled here on the north side of the garage, and then we will see how it performs over a long period of time. But I just thought that might be interesting to you. So the LeafOff solid gutter cover used to have this bracket system that looked more like a gutter hanger, and then it had a heavy duty plastic bracket that kind of came up at an angle, and then the gutter guard would kind of slot into it, and then it would create a gap, just a small gap, between the top lip of the gutter and the gutter guard material itself, and maybe it was a 1/4 inch gap, so it's super fine. A year or so ago they swapped out to this universal bracket, which is all aluminum, and it's also heavy gauge, so this is not something that you could easily bend or twist or anything. And the prior brackets, you had to get either the 5-inch version or the 6-inch version. So when they went to this bracket, it's now a universal bracket. So it just fits on the edge, on that inside lip of the gutter, hooks to that lip, and then you can see the gutter guard, basically the panel sits on top of that, and then you screw it down through the panel. So this is what creates the opening. Is just imagine this is the bull nose on the gutter guard, and then it comes around. So the gutter guard itself actually kind of clips, hooks inside there, puts pressure on the nose on the front, puts pressure downward, and then you can see how this hanger just sits, rests at an angle inside the gutter. So whether you've got a 5-inch gutter or a 6-inch gutter, this bracket will work. So we're going to install 2 of these brackets. One at kind of centrally located. So I'll bring the right one in a little bit, and the left one looks pretty good. Maybe bring that in a smidge, and then we will put that panel up. So that panel is going to go over the first course of shingles and hopefully under the second course of shingles. So you can, these shingles are old and they're probably a little brittle. So I've got a painter's putty knife, and I'm just going to try to pop these shingles up so we can make a connection up underneath that second course of shingles. Just like that, the panel's in place. So as you can see, this is what they would call a high profile system. It sits up quite a bit higher than the other system. So this is a brown, that's a white gutter. So if you had a brown roof, then you'd probably go with this panel. Probably you would match it up to your roof color instead of the gutter color. In this case, I have a black roof, so it stands out a little bit, but you get the idea there. So the panel being so long, it goes again over that first course of shingles and under the second course of shingles here. And then I showed you the little brackets that it mounts to there. So it's in place in terms of sitting here. So if you push down on it, you can see this very small opening, this little gap here in the front, and it also gives you kind of an idea how the water could curl around and kind of draw some of that debris in. So the gap here is about 1/4 inch, which is really tight for a system like this. So the theory is that because it has this kind of nose forward design, so it comes slightly past the edge of the gutter lip, and then you've got this small opening, that it's going to drive most of the leaves and debris off. But physics kind of shows otherwise, that as the leaves and debris adhere to the water, some of that stuff will curl around and get inside. So the big challenge with this type of system is keeping this area, this channel, free all the way across the gutter. If that can stay free, then it's no problem for the water to generally get inside. But if it gets clogged up, then what happens is the water has to redirect, and then it just comes down the face of the gutter and drips off the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and screw these panels in on the top side. And then the other thing that this has, because it sits up so high, are these end caps. And if I don't put an end cap onto that, which I'll have to fashion out of a piece of coil, birds will take up residence in there in no time. They can see these things for miles, and it's like a palace inside there. So if that opening stays like that, they'll just start bringing in a ton of stuff, and they'll build their nest up inside the gutter off the bottom, and then the water can go underneath it, but they stay dry between the panel here and the bottom of the gutter. Another thing that can happen is you can get bees, and mosquitoes can also take up residence inside that. Naturally, they can get through smaller openings, but the birds are the big problem with the end caps there. So I'll go ahead and get that screwed into place. It's actually beginning to rain while I'm up here, so that'll be a good chance for us to see how this thing works pretty quickly. We'd appreciate it if you hit the like and subscribe buttons, and be sure to ding the bell, and you'll be notified the next time we upload a video. So you can see how quickly the debris transitions off the roof.